Hello everyone, and welcome to a Giant Slayer TV deck tech. My name is Boulevard, and today we're going to be talking about Pantheon. Now, Pantheon and Ari Kennen have been two of the top decks for most of the Magical Misadventures season, and with Ari Kennen being the better of the two, it means if you are bringing them both in a tournament lineup, Ari Kennen is the one that is going to be banned more often. And that means that Pantheon needs to be a really solid anchor for your lineup. It's the one that you're going to have to be winning those games on consistently, and that means it's important for you to choose the version that is right for you, because comfort is king when it comes to tournament lineups in Legends of Runeterra. So there's two main versions of the Pantheon deck, Taric and Shyvana. And we're going to go over the core cards of a Pantheon build in general, and then sort of the main differences between the two. So the backbone of Pantheon, one of the big reasons to play Pantheon, and one of the big reasons to play nearly any mid-range Demacia deck, are these 5 cards: Brightsteel Protector, Sharp Sight, Single Combat, Golden Aegis, and Concerted Strike. These cards have played a pivotal role in the success from anything from Shen Fiora to Sivir Akshan. These are the core cards of mid-range Demacia now, and probably whatever comes after Pantheon will be running these as well. Now, the main goal, obviously, is going to be leveling Pantheon, which you do by targeting allies in 5 different rounds, and then Pantheon, when summoning or leveling up, will get that many keywords depending on how many rounds you have targeted in. One thing to note about this is that it means that if your Pantheon is already on field, it will get the 5 keywords on level up, but will not retroactively gain them if you continue to target things while it's on board. In order to get more keywords, you would have to replay a new Pantheon. Now, the core cards of the deck are obviously going to be some of the faded cards. Saga Seeker is specific to the Taric variant of the deck, partially because there are other things that the Shyvana variant wants to be pillaring on, but also because Taric allows you to pump the meaningful spells into Taric while residually adding them onto the Saga Seeker, making this 1-drop a little bit more of an appealing option as a support card rather than something for you to try and all-in on in the early game. This really helps with the aggro matchups that the Shyvana variant can struggle with, specifically Lurk, where a turn 1 Dragon Chow into a turn 2 Brightsteel Protector looks leagues different than a turn 1 Saga Seeker into a turn 2 Brightsteel Protector. Speaking of 2-drops, though, and turn 2 plays in general, Mountain Goat is a key card for the deck as well, and one that is actually debated on Brightsteel Protector. Usually you will see one of these as a 2 of and the other as a 3 of, and that is where the personalization of the Pantheon lists really start, because Brightsteel Protector is going to play better into these Demacia matchups where you want to play combat-oriented, you really play good on defense, and Mountain Goat can get near infinite value if your opponent is a control deck or something that isn't playing these early units. Maybe they can't block it efficiently, because it is not an appealing removal option. Generally, they want to be taking care of Wounded White Flames and Pantheons and sort of your more impactful cards than the Mountain Goat, but pass on turn 1, turn 2 Mountain Goat Strike into turn 3 Wounded White Flame with a gem is just one of the strongest turn 3 plays in Legends of Runeterra right now, and is one that can snowball certain matchups right out of the get-go. So, it's just a slight difference in playstyle. Do you care about being more defensive or more proactive with your 2-drop slot? Then, of course, we have Guiding Touch and Pale Cascade. These 2 cards are doing really everything that the Pantheon deck wants. They're cycling through, which is giving you access to draw power that the Targon Demacia mid-range decks like Aesol Shyvana didn't necessarily have back in their time, because these tricks were just a little bit too inefficient. But being able to proc Faded as well as progress the Pantheon level up makes them auto-includes in a deck like this. Now you can cut down on the numbers of Guiding Touches and Pale Cascades. In fact, when players are looking for tech options, maybe something like a Blinded Mystic, these are actually some of the first cards that they're going to be cutting down on in order to make room for that. If you wanted to put Bastion into your Shyvana version of this deck, Guiding Touch or Pale Cascade would likely be one of the cards that you're cutting down on. Then Hush, it's a necessary evil. Blinded Mystic is cool and all, but players have been going more towards a 50-50 split on it as of late, rather than even playing 2 copies of it like they were in the early days, because we're finding that with Lee Sin making a resurgence in the tournament meta, it's a little bit more important to be able to hit champions, especially because if Ari Kennen is going to be the consistent ban, and if you are running Ari Kennen in the same lineup as Pantheon in a tournament, you're probably going to have to play a Pantheon mirror too. And hushing the Taric, the Shyvana, or the Pantheon is just a little bit better than Blinded Mysticing the Wounded White Flame, even if it is a permanent silence. Then, of course, we have the Wounded White Flame. This is the card that really makes the deck, lets you start snowballing out of control from the early game, and is one of the big reasons that you are playing a Pantheon deck, is because you like the idea of this 3-drop dragon coming down that can start to snowball the game, and is, of course, more important in the Shyvana version of the deck than this one. Get into that in a second. Then the things that are indicative of the Taric version, you don't really see these in the Shyvana version: Zenith Blade and Bastion. Now, with the Shyvana version having access to Dragon's Clutch, that is sort of their endgame overwhelm finisher. Instead, we have Zenith Blade. Now, you could see this as a pro or a con, especially when deciding if the Taric or Shyvana version is right for you. People who have played a lot of Lee Sin in the past might really just never want to touch Zenith Blade again because they've had too many times, or they opened 2 or 3 copies of it in your opening hand, and it could even be the same with Bastion. These cards do get a little bit clunky if you can see them in multiples, and that's really a problem that you're going to run into no matter what Pantheon variant you run, is just potentially clogging up on combat tricks, sort of like Butterfly Fiora used to. But they're necessary for the kind of meta that we find ourselves in. Even Zenith Blade, if you don't feel like giving Overwhelm to something, a permanent +2 health onto your Pantheon plus a target is very nice. While you might not necessarily be getting the full value because you're not getting the Overwhelm onto it as well, it does still turn Pantheon into a 6/5, which is a lot harder to kill than a 4/2. So it is something to keep in mind. While you're missing out on a little bit of value, it's not the end of the world. Golden Aegis, of course, this is the combo card with Taric. Pretty much the main reason to run Taric is the explosive power of Golden Aegis. If you haven't seen this interaction before, it's not very intuitive by reading the 2 cards together, but what will happen is you take your first combat phase of the turn. Let's say you have the attack token, you attack with everybody. Then you Golden Aegis Taric. Taric supports a unit. Taric will give barrier onto the supported unit and rally again, but that only happens once per turn. The next time you go to support in that rallied combat phase, Taric will not copy the barrier or the rally. But that is one of the big advantages that the Taric version has over Shyvana, is these explosive Golden Aegis finishers, and one of the reasons that players really look to run this instead of the Dragon version. Then of course Concerted Strike, just a staple of the Demacia mid-range archetypes. When we go and look at the Shyvana deck, obviously we've cut the Saga Seeker for the Dragon Chow, and while I cited Saga Seeker as something that really helps with the early game of Taric Pantheon in the aggressive matchups, you can't necessarily just slot out Dragon Chow for Saga Seeker as much as you might like to and expect that to fix all of your problems. The ability to pillar on the Taric while still pumping faded triggers into the Saga Seeker is one of the big appeals for it in any sort of longer played game, and Dragon Chow actually gets a really cool interaction in a deck like this specifically, where Wounded White Flame will not kill the Dragon Chow if you don't need to use it as a chump blocker. If you can keep it at 3 health, then the Wounded White Flame will come in, just strike it, draw you a card, and then you can kill it with another dragon to draw another card. And the dragons in the deck, of course, Dragon's Clutch coming in for the big finish as well as maintaining cards because we don't have something like Zenith Blade, but it's going to be Shyvana and Screeching Dragon alongside those Wounded White Flames. With Wounded White Flame being one of the best cards in the deck, being able to nearly guarantee it on turn 3 if you pass 1 and 2 with a Dragon's Clutch in hand is a mass appeal of this Shyvana variant. The other sort of obvious appeal is the Fury mechanic that is spread across multiple of your units. The Taric version is only going to have Wounded White Flame, you have Shyvana and Screeching Dragon, so you do get to play a little bit more of a combat-focused game where the Taric deck is looking for more explosive finishes. You know, we Zenith Blade onto Taric, we pass that onto another unit, next turn we Golden Aegis the Taric, we pass that onto another unit. We're looking to level Shyvana, start using Strafing Strikes to snowball the board, and sort of move on to finish out the game from there. More of a board control style of play to the explosive power of something like the Taric variant of the deck. Now, if you're looking for a concise way to summarize the differences between the 2 lists, you actually don't have to look much further than the champion spell of each of the Splash champions. Shyvana's Confront, grant an ally challenger, is really just looking to turn Wounded White Flame into another copy of Screeching Dragon, one that is benefiting from the Faded, and really just helps you play towards the Fury mechanic that is inherent within the deck, play for the board, get these dragons a little bit bigger, finish them off with a Dragon's Clutch. Taric's champion spell, Blessing of Targon, is much more explosive. You put this onto a Taric, and you put it onto the supported ally. That's another 6 damage potentially coming in at your opponent's Nexus, and you're really just going for those big explosive finishes. Another main difference is that the Pantheon Taric version of the deck is more reliant on drawing both of their champions, but when you draw both of their champions, the deck performs better. You level the Pantheon a little bit more quickly, a little bit more consistently. You have more draw power than the Shyvana version because Taric is passing around your Guiding Touches and Pale Cascades as draw 2s, as well as you still have the Zenith Blades to sort of thin out the deck and maintain cards in hand in general. So the Shyvana version will do better when you don't see both of your champions because you have Screeching Dragon. It's another mid-range option for you to pillar on in a pinch, and it is all you need in some matchups. The other thing is that the Shyvana version is actually better at seeing one of their champions. Dragon's Clutch has a 66% chance to draw the Shyvana, whereas the Taric Pantheon version needs to draw one of them organically. If they can find the Taric, they're more likely to find the Pantheon, but you do still have to find that Taric in the first place in a deck with little draw power, but also draw power that you don't want to be using before you find the Taric. You don't want a Guiding Touch to find Taric, you want to find Taric and then Guiding Touch it in order to pass around a Faded buff and get 2 draws off of it. Now, given an infinite amount of time, one of these versions probably would come out as an objectively better variant of the Taric deck, but we don't have an infinite amount of time, and as it stands, players are split right down the middle in tournament fashion of Shyvana versus Taric. It is just coming down to a playstyle choice. How do you want to play your mid-range Demacia deck? If you go with Shyvana, you're looking at more Fury, more Faded, more board control. You're playing it slow, you're gobbling up these wide boards, and then going for a big finish with multiple dragons perhaps, and a Dragon's Clutch giving overwhelm. And of course, you do have that Pantheon that is going to be a little bit of a backup win con almost to the dragon package at the forefront. If we go with the Taric version, maybe you're looking to rally 5 times in 2 turns by slamming back-to-back Golden Aegises onto your Taric, getting that level up, throwing down a leveled Pantheon on top of it, and ending games out of nowhere. The one main difference between these two decks when we're looking at matchup charts, and really the only difference, is that Taric is performing a lot better into Lurk, hovering around a 50% win rate, where Shyvana is at 35%. Now, a big reason for that is the Saga Seeker, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, doing better into these go-wide decks, but also Screeching Dragon gets outscaled in Lurk in a way that it won't against something like Spiders or Pirates. If Screeching Dragon comes down on turn 5, it's really not killing 2 and 3 drop Lurkers organically. It's going to need a little bit of a boost. On top of that, if you throw down the Screeching Dragon and a Zersorath Under Titan is the response, then that is something that will eat your Screeching Dragon for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Outside of that, Taric Pantheon is doing a little bit better into Spiders and Pirates than Shyvana Pantheon is, but they're both still losing matchups for each of these decks. The Shyvana doesn't really have something like the Lurk matchup that it swings heavily into its favor outside of the Taric deck. And if you're looking for stats on the head-to-head, it is basically 50-50. I think it's literally 1 game favored for Taric on ladder, something like 400 games played between the two. And it's 201 wins for Taric to 199 wins for Shyvana. So you really do have to just look inward and decide for yourself, how do I like to play my mid-range Demacia decks? Is there something in my lineup that I feel like I have a cohesive strategy where I am going to mentally prepare myself to play the game a certain way over the course of this tournament, and one of these just fits into that rhythm a little bit better? There's literally any reason that you could pick between these two decks is fine. Maybe you like the Shyvana skin more than you like the Taric skin. Maybe you just finally want to play a Taric deck. All of these reasons are completely valid. But thank you so much for watching. That is going to do it for today's Deck Tech. Again, my name is Boulevard. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check back for the next one.